Red Bull and Ferrari want the FIA to clarify the flexibility of Formula One pacesetter McLaren's front wing, but it has passed all legality tests so far, and the governing body had no plans for short-term action. At least that is what they communicated at the start of this little probe. But in recent days, things have taken a huge and sudden turn, for the worse for Red Bull and Ferrari this time. Could their own started probe blow up in their own face? McLaren has gone from struggling to gain points to being a regular win candidate and, if Red Bull's issues worsen, a surprise rival in both 2024 championships in only 18 months. While Red Bull confesses to being technically confused, McLaren has not made a mistake in development since it began to move towards the front last year, starting with an Azerbaijan Grand Prix improvement in late April that created the groundwork for the significant stride ahead in Austria in early July. McLaren's rapid development has been unparalleled since then, and this year it appears to have sacrificed some of its high-speed dominance to improve performance in the slower turns, transforming it into an all-rounder that is a threat at every track, outscoring Red Bull in 9 of the last 10 races to reduce its lead to just 8 points. Rivals have upped their examination of the McLaren front wing, particularly after video footage revealed how much it bends under pressure on the straights before reverting to its main position under braking. The performance of the Mercedes front wing has also been observed. Making the most of the flexibility that must be permitted in aerodynamic elements, since they cannot be completely rigid, is critical to the car's functionality. All wings deform under stress to some amount. The problem is to have the control do so predictably, consistently, and safely, while passing the load tests. Red Bull team principal Christian Horner did not explicitly indicate that he was seeking clarification, but it is thought that Red Bull is allied with Ferrari on this issue. After Red Bull was beaten by McLaren at Zandvoort, though, he did admit, the way that the front wings are being used are quite different. If you look at the front wing angle of McLaren and Mercedes, they're very, very different to the rest of the grid. Horner also mentioned an in-season change to the load testing for early 2021, when flexing bodywork was an issue. The regs are very clear, said Horner. That's an FIA issue, so obviously there's a test you pass, and then you have to look at the wording of the regulations. If you remember back in 2021, certainly around Baku time, there was a change to the front wing regulation. Even though our wing passed the test, it was exploiting an elasticity. So that's an FIA issue. We'll leave it with them. The FIA is actively examining the degree of flexibility provided by front wings, and improvements may be made for next year based on what is learnt. Beginning with the Belgian Grand Prix before the summer break, the FIA began to assess front wing deformation on the track more precisely, using its own extra cameras located on the nose and pointing sideways, as the standard forward-facing cameras used for broadcasts do not catch the entire front wing. When this became public in July, the FIA stated that the data will be utilised to improve its understanding of bodywork flexibility for future rules, rather than making any changes this season. At the time, it also said that all front wings tested thus far had passed the current testing and were considered lawful. It restated that viewpoint in a statement made on Tuesday in response to reports of Red Bull and Ferrari's worries, effectively shutting down the probe very quickly. All front wings are currently compliant with the 2024 regulations, according to the FIA statement. Since the Belgian Grand Prix, the FIA has acquired additional data during FP1 and FP2 sessions to assess dynamic behaviours through an FIA-mandated video camera which captures areas of the front wing which are not visible through the official FOM cameras. This exercise will continue at least up until Singapore to ensure every team will have been running the mandated FIA camera on different types of tracks, low, medium, high and very high downforce. This will ensure a large database allowing the FIA to draw the most objective picture of the situation and quantify differences between the various dynamic patterns observed on track. The FIA has the right to introduce new tests if irregularities are suspected. There are no plans for any short-term measures, but we are evaluating the situation with the medium and long term in mind. This predicament is all part of the FIA's continual attempt to keep things under control. Realistically, success in managing aerodynamic component flexibility can only ever be defined as keeping it within bearable limits. But above all, they want the teams to stop blaming each other of illegal tricks. The FIA technical department finally has a clear idea of where the line is on aeroelasticity, which should be shared with teams. However, the current reality implies different. Ferrari and Red Bull's reservations about what McLaren and Mercedes are doing indicate that either it exceeds their idea of what is acceptable, which may be based on their own long-standing experiences, or they simply cannot reproduce it. In any case, they are lobbying the governing body to take action. But if there is no intervention this season and a competitor believes there is an illegal amount of flexing going on, they can just file a protest. Though the stewards are nominated by the FIA, they are completely independent of it, and there have been instances in the past where the two have disagreed fundamentally. Stewards might make a decision based on the flexibility of a component, the wording of the regulations, and the documented history. It would be complex, but if a team is convinced that someone else is going too far, that is the arena in which it may be tested. Every team has the right to object, as well as to explain that their component design is fully lawful based on their understanding of the rules and how they are enforced. Andrea Stella, McLaren's team principal, was not asked about this at Monza, although he has already addressed the issue. "We are happy that the FIA brings input on board," he said in late June about the process of policing flexible bodywork. "If any team has a concern, it is good that they listen to the teams. They do the checks, and if they are happy with what they see, then we are happy with the FIA decision." With the FIA decisions around flexibility, to be honest, we have no big reasons for concern. The laws governing flexible bodywork in Formula 1 appear to be basic. Article 3. 2.2 of the technical regulations requires all aerodynamic components or bodywork influencing the car's aerodynamic performance to be rigidly secured and immobile. Additionally, these components must produce a uniform, solid, hard, continuous, and impervious surface under all conditions, with specific exceptions. This rule is supplemented by a number of technical directives, including last year's TD018, which limited variations in the flexibility of a part or any relative movement of interconnected parts. According to then FIA single-seater technical director Tim Goss, this was about making sure that the FIA and the teams have a common understanding of where we will draw the line. There have been several similar interventions over the years. That implies there is a long history of what is and isn't authorized, making it difficult to reach a uniform understanding. That is due in part to the opacity of the laws and the FIA's lack of transparency in making technical instructions public. However, it is also due to the inability of the restrictions. The term rigidity is fine, but it needs to operate in the actual world. And the truth is that completely rigid bodywork elements are not conceivable, particularly given the pressures that the parts are subjected to when traveling at high speeds on track. Not to mention the added spikes created by being coupled to a car that is hitting bumps and curbs. There must be some compliance or the parts will simply break, possibly in quite dangerous ways. The primary goal of the laws is to assure safety, and having physically rigid components would be unsafe, resulting in an unresolvable conflict in the rules. That produces a certain level of essential subjectivity, which is why the de facto permissible flexibility is established by the policing and load testing that cars must undergo. Pass those and you're good to go. This of course means that part of the game is to design pieces that pass stress testing, but also have aeroelastic properties that provide performance. And according to the FIA, McLaren and Mercedes have been able to do so. And well, Ferrari and Red Bull just have to catch up on their technology instead of labeling other teams as illegal. At least, that's according to the FIA, and after all, they run the tests. McLaren and Mercedes engineers have regularly sought to include aeroelasticity into their aerodynamics within the regulations, since it can often be utilized to reduce drag in a straight line, provided they pass the FIA's load testing. It has become evident that they have been able to provide a little degree of flex in the front wing that has been advantageous to the existing rules, as it can assist to overcome the balancing issues raised by the reinstatement of ground effect flooring. And if it's all within regulations, as stated by the FIA, then it's good for them. What do you think? Will Red Bull and Ferrari circle back to this again in the upcoming races? Or will they finally accept that they're just behind on innovation? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below.